Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
Welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief. I'm Adam Lucente. Today is Friday, May 8th, 2026. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance was scheduled to meet Qatari Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed Al-Thani on Friday to discuss the negotiations with Iran. It constitutes the latest sign a deal may soon be reached between the U.S. and Iran on the war. Israel, of course, is likewise a party to this conflict, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Wednesday that he is, quote, maintaining continuous contact with the U.S., including President Donald Trump, on a near-daily basis. However, Al Monitor's Rina Bassist wrote in an upcoming analysis that Israel is finding itself increasingly out of the loop on negotiations with Iran, as well as on the Israel-Lebanon talks and ceasefire, leading to concerns in Israel that Trump may pursue a deal with Tehran seen as insufficient. In this episode, Rina takes us through the specific issues the U.S. has not consulted Israel on, why Israel is likely to accept an Iran deal it views as imperfect, and how the daylight with Washington could hurt Netanyahu ahead of the October elections and benefit his main opponent, former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Hope you enjoy. Rina, welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief.
Hello, Adam. Thank you for having me.
So, Rina, I was going through your upcoming piece. My question is, what specific developments has the Trump administration kept Israel out of the loop on in terms of Iran?
Yeah, I think that since the beginning of the joint Israeli-American operation on February 28, the Trump administration has kept Israel out of the loop on three levels. The first level, I would say, is the contacts of the Trump administration with the Gulf countries, especially with Saudi Arabia. And I think there is a feeling in Israel that they are not really sure how much Riyadh has been involved in the decision-making process of Washington. And this is obviously a very destabilizing element for the Netanyahu government. That's the first level. Now, the second level is evidently the Strait of Hormuz and the American strategy on that. And there is a feeling that the Israeli government was not really consulted on the different stages, the different developments. The American side, obviously, it was not much consulted on the American decision to set up this counter blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, and even less so on the decision by President Trump to launch Project Freedom and then to revoke it days later. So this is another level in which Israel really found itself out of the loop. But the most disturbing level for Israel is evidently the negotiations between the Americans and the Iranians. Here as well, Israel is completely out of the picture. And there is a feeling, or there are a lot of concerns in Israel that the Americans might advance, might be ready to make concessions that would be dangerous for Israel's security. It's unclear for the Netanyahu government, for Israel, how far the Trump administration is willing to go. Is the administration willing, for instance, to give up on the issue of the ballistic missile project? Is the administration willing to give up on the issue of Iran's support of the proxies? All these are big unknowns for Israel. And as much as Israel would try to pressure the Americans or Washington on that, for the moment, it seems that really Israel is kept away from these talks.
And just as a quick follow-up, you mentioned the proxies in the region. Does Israel feel there's similar disagreements or that they're not being informed on the talks with Lebanon? What's the dynamic there?
Well, you know that from the beginning, Israel has tried to separate the two arenas, to have on the one hand the Iran operation, and then everything that is happening in Lebanon to keep it separately. And that was because there was always this assessment in Israel that the Lebanese government might be of goodwill, would have liked perhaps to limit Hezbollah's operations in the south of Lebanon, but they are unwilling or unable, maybe that's a better word, unable to do so. So Israel, it is very important for Israel to keep this freedom of operation in Lebanon. And now we have seen that this is no longer the case because for the Americans, since the Iranians conditioned the ceasefire on that, and the Trump administration accepted this condition and forced Netanyahu's hand. It was President Trump who forced Netanyahu himself in person to accept a ceasefire in Lebanon. So here as well, Israel finds itself out of the loop in a way that decisions are no longer made by the Israeli government. The decisions on Lebanon for Israel are made by the Trump administration.
Right. And, should the U.S. move forward with a nuclear deal with Iran that Israel considers insufficient, how might Israel respond to that?
I think Israel, or maybe let's say Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, won't have a choice but to accept it. I think that's clear. And we have just spoken about Lebanon and the way that President Trump forced Netanyahu's hand, and that's obviously going to be the same thing with Iran. I would say two things. First of all, Israelis do remember that it was the American president who decided to join Israel on the last day of the June war last year and to strike three Iranian nuclear sites. And it was President Trump who took the lead on the current war. So under such circumstances, it's really impossible for Israel to say no to the American president. And I would add to that another layer. Prime Minister Netanyahu had said a few days ago that little by little Israel will have to learn to survive, to continue to operate with less American financial security support, because you know that Israel is receiving very large sums, 3.8 billion per year American financial support. But having said that, I mean, it's very clear for every Israeli, and more so since the beginning of the war, that Israel depends on the U.S. It needs American bombs. It needs American airplanes. It needs American missiles. So to say that Israel has any possibility to say no to the American president, I think that's only we are kidding ourselves.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Rina Bassist after this short break.
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al-Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al-Monitor to follow what leaders and decision-makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com, that's AL-MONITOR.com, and use promo code POD25, POD25, for a discount.
Okay, we're back. Rina, finally, there's an election coming up in Israel. What do these disagreements with the U.S. mean for Netanyahu's political future? And is this something that Naftali Bennett perhaps can capitalize on?
I think we have seen that Prime Minister Netanyahu is already paying a political price for following President Trump on the decision for a ceasefire in Lebanon, for instance, because taking the order, quote unquote, to stop firing in Beirut and north of the Litani River. This decision by Prime Minister Netanyahu was met with objections, not only by the Israeli opposition, but also by several members of Netanyahu's own coalition, or saying, but you can't just leave the American president decide on matters so pertinent, so relevant to Israel's security. To that, we should add also the fact that the large majority of the people that live in north of Israel, in periphery towns and in small villages, traditionally these are people who support the Likud, Netanyahu's party. And in such a situation where the majority of these people are against the ceasefire in Lebanon, then of course he's paying the price. If we talk about Naftali Bennett, he was actually the person that was at the origin of what we call in Israel the octopus theory. The theory saying that Israel should strike not only the proxies of Iran, Hezbollah or other groups, but the leadership in Tehran itself. And this is what we have seen on February 28th. So Naftali Bennett has a lot of credibility in the eyes of Israelis. And you know that the Israeli electorate has veered to the right over the past few years, which explains that very quickly, once he announced this merger with another leader of the opposition, Yair Lapid, he's already as popular as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And this is in times of war, when usually the leader is the one that is most popular.
Very interesting. But I think based on what you're saying, should a new government come to power, it will also be difficult for them to say no to the Trump administration.
Absolutely. I mean, in any case, I mean, even if Naftali Bennett becomes prime minister, it doesn't mean that he could say immediately no to any orders or recommendations given by the Trump administration. But let's wait and see. We still have a few months until the end of October.
Rina, thanks a lot for your time, and we look forward to more of your reporting on these issues.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks for listening to the Al Monitor Brief. Be sure to follow Al Monitor for more on the stories impacting the Middle East. Until next time, I'm Adam Lucente.